Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Science has sent orbiters to Neptune, eradicated smallpox, and created a supercomputer that can do 60 trillion calculations per second. Science frees us from superstition and dogma and enables us to base our knowledge on evidence. Well, most of us. Previously, I've explored how organized faith and primitive religious values blight our lives.
You take the women and dress them like whores on the street.
I don't dress women, they dress themselves.
Do it now, but you allow it as a norm.
The fault line runs deeper even than religion. There are two ways of looking at the world, through faith and superstition, or through the rigors of logic, observation and evidence, through reason. Yet today, reason has a battle on its hands. I want to confront the epidemic of irrational, superstitious thinking.
Would you understand somebody on the spirit side with the name Charles? I believe that I give...
You really believe it?
I believe absolutely
Seriously,
100% that it's true, because it's been proven to me against my rationality.
It's a multi-million-pound industry that impoverishes our culture.
Astrology leans toward the divine and the sacred, words which I know you don't like very much.
And throws up New Age gurus who exhort us to run away from reality.
The tree-ness is the spiritual quality.
Or the rockness.
Or the rockness.
Yeah. As a scientist, I don't think our indulgence of irrational superstition is harmless. I believe it profoundly undermines civilization. Reason and a respect for evidence are the source of our progress, our safeguard against fundamentalists and those who profit from obscuring the truth. We live in dangerous times when superstition is gaining ground and rational science is under attack. In this program, I want to take on the enemies of reason. "300 years ago, in the Age of Enlightenment, scientists and philosophers from Galileo to David Hume had the courage to stand up for intellectual principles and reason. The rational science they pioneered has given us tangible benefits. Everything from antibiotics to electricity, sewage systems to sat-nav. And it's not just material progress. Increased life expectancy, health and leisure provided by modern medicine and industrial technology have given more people more time than ever before to educate themselves, express their creativity, and ponder existence. And yet, into this better world that reason has built, primitive darkness is coming back, a disturbing pick and mix of superstitions. Where better to start my journey than a New Age fair?
Hello, what do you do? What sort of readings do you do?
All kinds. I do the tarot, and then I also do the crystal ball. This is George.
Hello. What can you do for me?
All right, well, we can take it over a photograph.
All right, I'd like that, yes. What do I do? Just sit on the throne there?
Just take a seat, please.
Shall I take my glasses off? Oh, what have we got here?
Right, now, you have got a couple of spirit guides around you at the moment, because I think there's something in your life changing, but I think this is about you as well, being more comfortable with yourself. Now, what you have here is you have somebody in spirit who's really, really close to you, and they've got their arms around your neck.
Well, that's very nice to know.
All these people reap the rewards of science and reason, but many here revel in a foggy suspicion of scientific thinking.
Okay, so you could teach me how to use my psychic energy?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes. You can rely much better on that than on your head.
Irrationality is woven into the fabric of modern life. We unthinkingly indulge unscientific delusion.
I'm the rather schizophrenic Gemini.
Aquarius.
Pisces.
Astrology is so pervasive that just about everyone has been indoctrinated with the alleged character of their star sign.
They're fiery, a bit unreliable, they love traveling, they're very expansive, they're quite spiritual.
Loyal, spend too much money, good leader.
They can be a bit moody, swinging one way and the other. They can be very bubbly 1 minute and then a bit down, and you never know what you're going to get with them, my husband says.
A full quarter of the British population claim to believe in astrology. That's more than believe in any one of the gods touted by religions. Day in, day out, astrological horoscopes get far more newspaper column inches than science. Amusingly, it falls foul of our modern taboo against lazy stereotyping.
How would we react if a newspaper published a daily column that read something like this? Germans, it is in your nature to be hard-working and methodical, which should serve you well at work today. In your personal relationships, especially this evening, you will need to curb your natural tendency to obey orders. Chinese, inscrutability has many advantages, but it may be your undoing today. British, your stiff upper lip may serve you well in business dealings, but try to relax and let yourself go in your social life. And so on through 12 national stereotypes. Of course, the astrology columns are not as offensive as that, but we should ask ourselves exactly where the difference lies. Both are guilty of facile discrimination, dividing humanity up into exclusive groups based on no evidence.
So now I want to find out how those who trade in such irrational nonsense can possibly justify what they do.
This is a map of the cosmos with London in the very center.
I always thought that by the 21st century, science and reason would have long since cleaned up. And yet every day of the week, we're encouraged to retreat into the fog of the superstitious past. Astrology is a primitive belief system made into elaborate pseudoscience. It arrogantly makes humans the focal point of the universe. The movement of planets is supposed to signify petty developments in our career or love life. It was developed in the 2nd century AD by the philosopher Claudius Ptolemy and has not moved on since, despite the discovery of new planets and despite a shift in the Earth's rotational axis that has thrown Ptolemy's zodiac out by 23 degrees.
You could ask a question. You could say, who has stolen my money?
It never made sense when it was first invented, and it makes even less sense now.
Reel it off as though you mean they get it right. Do you think there's an actual physical influence of the planets that somehow beams down and influences us, people?
I think it's very hard to see that. I think if you try to understand astrology as a causal agent,
right,
I think that's hard to imagine how that would happen. I think you have to look at the planets as signifiers. When you look at the movement of Saturn around the zodiac, it's a very strong signifier of what's going on in individual lives.
I don't even understand how they could possibly be signifiers. I mean, how could the rise of Saturn possibly be a signifier for something that's going on physiologically in a person's body? The position of planets in the signs of the zodiac.
This is what you keep coming back to ask me. How could it possibly work?
Yes.
And I've told you, I don't know. It's a deep, dark mystery.
What isn't a deep, dark mystery is why the trite vagaries of newspaper horoscopes seem to chime with readers. Psychologists have identified what's known as the Barnum Effect, whereby people tend to believe statements are accurate for them personally, when in fact they're general enough to apply to anyone.
We could devise a little experiment where we take your forecasts and then give some of them straight, give some of them randomized, sometimes give Virgo, the Pisces forecast, etc., and then ask people how accurate they were.
Yes, that would be a perverse thing to do, wouldn't it?
It would be, yes, but I mean, wouldn't that be a good test?
A test of what?
Well, how accurate you are.
I think that your intention there is mischief, and I think what you'd then get back was mischief.
Okay, well, my intention would not be mischief. My intention would be experimental test.
Okay.
Scientific test. Well, but even if it was mischief, how could that possibly influence it?
I think it does influence it. I think whenever you do things with astrology, intentions are strong.
I'd have thought you'd be eager. I mean, I'd have thought you'd really... See, the fact that you're not makes me think you don't really, in your heart of hearts, believe it. I don't think you really are prepared to put your reputation on the line.
I just don't believe in the experiment, Richard. It's that simple.
Well, you're in a kind of no-lose situation then, aren't you? Because...
I hope so.
Yeah.
Regardless of Neil Spencer's concerns, I wanted to conduct a simple trial. We selected 20 people at random. We asked them to read that week's horoscope for Capricorn, but as a test, we said it applied to their own star sign.
Not only do you have clever Mercury and ambitious Mars focusing on success,
but now the Sun is at the same pivotal mid-haven angle of your solar chart.
I have no idea what that means.
Put simply, this means that this is your moment to go that extra mile to become the person you dream of becoming.
Remember, however, that there will be others who want what you have and will stop at nothing to get it.
Astrologers say this should fit just Capricorn and not the rest. But what actually happened?
Yeah, maybe. To be honest, I felt there's some Mercury energy this week because there's a lot of arguments around and a lot of bad vibes. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
What a load of old junk.
It could apply to me as much as to the next person.
Well, yeah, well, in a way, yeah. I am, I'm going on a flamenco course in Spain.
That isn't necessarily pertaining to me this week. It's pertaining to me generally.
Pile of rubbish.
The same number of people agreed that the horoscope was accurate for them as disagreed, and similar results are found with proper large-scale experiments. Technically, all but one of our group should have disagreed, namely our only Capricorn.
Does it apply to you?
Not at this moment, no.
Am I taking this too seriously? I believe astrology misleads the public, denies scientific progress, and belittles our universe. There's a far richer way of looking at the cosmos. Astronomy is a triumph of the human intellect, a real science, constantly enriched by new evidence.
Forget about the astrologers' charts with their constellations and planets moving in and out of this house or that house. Go into a real observatory and look at the Milky Way. Or go out into the country on a moonless night. Just lie on your back and gaze up at the stars.
The heart-stopping sight you'd see is 100 billion stars spinning through an expanding universe at a speed of 1 million miles per day. The light from some of the closer stars started its journey at the time of the dinosaurs. You're staring into a deep time machine. And yet, even as science unravels these natural wonders, our society is drawn to the slim pickings of supernatural belief. Half the British population now say they believe in paranormal phenomena. Over 8 million of us have owned up to consulting psychic mediums.
What I want you to do, Richard, for me is just to pull me out 8 of them, please.
Simon Goodfellow claims that, with these cards, he can use his psychic powers to tune in to the spirits of dead people around me.
7, 8.
These voices from the past can apparently give him a glimpse of my future.
Lovely, Richard, thank you. Now, I feel he's giving me the initial G with his name. OK, now I feel with this man as well, I feel he was a family member. And I also feel very strongly with something to do with advertising that was in, something to do with newspapers with him as well. Now, I do feel with him as well, he's telling me about changes that are coming up in your life at the moment. I see total changes in how you're working to how you will be working in the future.
The word Simon seems to be fishing for is retirement, the obvious next step for most 60-somethings.
It won't be as hectic and it won't be as active for you, and I do feel you have to grasp that when it...
This could apply to anyone my age, but can Simon back up his more precise statements?
What was that male relative with a G? What was that about you said earlier on?
Right, the male relative with a G, right. I do feel with him, I don't feel he was a family member, but I do feel with him, right, it was some connection.
I thought you said he was a family member,
Did I say that? Did I with a family member?
Yeah, I think you did.
Right, OK.
Maybe.
Let me see if I can feel him here still.
Yes, OK.
Right, OK then. What I feel with him, right, I feel as though there was a lot of things. It was a very strong character. Another feeling he's given me is it was very regimented as well, and I feel he served in some forces, in some way as well. But can you understand anybody with a military background that was connected to you?
Well, I've got really nobody military in my background at all, and actually nobody beginning with G either.
Right, OK.
Spirit G has rung no bells, but now another voice comes from the ether.
Oh, well, she's given me the initial E with the name. Now, I do feel with her as well, it's something to do with, I feel, a grandparent, and I want to give you an E-sounding name.
My grandmother had a name beginning with E.
At last, something I can identify with.
E-sounding name.
Yes.
Tell me more about her. I mean,
the lady, I do feel with her as well, she had a lot of cats.
A lot of
cats.
Perhaps not.
She never had a cat. She hated cats, as a matter of fact.
Right.
She liked dogs, but she hated cats.
Well, I can understand. Not everybody, though. What you've got to also remember with this as well, not everybody can relate to everything that a reader will say.
No.
Not everybody. I mean, I've had people like yourself who have...
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Because normally people who come to these events come for a reason, and because they want closure and direction in their life. And also what you've got to think about, Richard, as well, some things are very raw to me.
Psychics may believe they communicate with the dead, but I've seen no evidence for it. My concern is that for some people, this superstitious nonsense can be far from harmless fun.
If you've lost somebody dear to you, and I'm trampling all over those memories by telling you that they're here now saying this and that. I mean, that's none of my business, and if I'm just doing it because I can earn some money out of it, I've known cases of people that have lost a child that's so dear to them, and they cannot get over the fact they've lost the child, and become addicted to these... Okay, this is a lady who is trying to connect with somebody at the front here.
Darren Brown is a celebrated illusionist, but also a skeptic. He makes clear his performances depend simply on mental tricks.
She looks very, very elegant, and there's guilt on her part, a feeling of guilt. I think your father passed when you were very young as well. Is that right?
He gives me the inside intelligence on how a psychic medium might exploit entirely earthly trade secrets.
They're using a skill called cold reading, which is a way of communicating information to somebody where it sounds like they know everything about you and they can reveal facts seemingly about your life and describe your character in a way that you'd be amazed by. Whereas in fact it's a linguistic trick, or a set of linguistic tricks, where they're saying words and you're constantly supplying the meaning yourself, but it can be very convincing. She's asking about, I want to say Charlie? Charles? The psychic will, if it's with a group of people, throw out a name. And someone she left behind? Now, that name could refer to a person in the audience who's living, or it could refer to someone that's died, or it could be a friend of the person. You know, it really could be anything. So it's up to somebody to pick up on it and turn it into what they want it to be. Is it another relationship that you had? Sorry?
That's my ex-husband's name.
And of course, if they say, yes, that was my husband, then the reader can go, yes, that's right, he's here, he's saying he still loves you, or whatever that is, and they turn it back into, make it sound as if they were saying it was your husband, when in fact it could have been anybody, it could have been the name of the person that was sat there. Lily or Lucy or something like that. Yeah. Far from it being all vague or saying things that apply to just everybody, you'll get very specific details. She's saying something about a hat that you used to like, or something with a hat, yeah? One thing I saw was, there's a dog, he's saying it's something to do with his dog that used to sleep in the hallway. And the answer sort of came back, sort of, no. Yeah, well, it's something in the hall, it could be a picture of a dog. Is there a picture of a dog in the hallway? And the answer came back, no. I mean, I've just put up another picture, I put up a picture in the hallway of the family or something. That's it, he's saying he doesn't like the picture in the hallway. The dog was forgotten, but it actually started off talking about a dog.
There's a network of over 500 spiritualist churches across Britain. Here, Tuesday night is séance night.
And we ask that we can now build a bridge between this world and the next, so that we can once again go some way to proving that we survived death and that our loved ones in the spirit are forever with us. Amen. Okay, I expect most of you are familiar with spiritualism, but those that...
Spiritualism makes a nod to God, then it descends into a darker world. The real draw here is when the dead start talking inside the medium's head.
Okay, well, the first link that I want to do is I feel I've got somebody giving me the name Charles. And I want a gentleman on the spirit side that passed with chest conditions with this. And there's something about a name that sounds like, it sounds a bit like Devon, but I thought I could hear, could be Davon or Davenport, something like that. And I feel over this side somewhere. Can anybody understand this so far? The lady close to the bookshelf there. Would you understand somebody on the spirit side with the name Charles?
No, but I have a home in Davenport.
You have a home in Davenport?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't what you're doing cold reading?
Well, depends what you call cold reading. This is something that a lot of the rationalists have come up with, is saying that what you do is you say something and people basically make it fit. So I'll see if I can find the Charles in a minute, but let me just give you a few things that I can feel about you. Has there been a few problems with a stomach condition around you? Because I feel as if I want to go to my stomach and I feel uncomfortable there. Does that make no sense to you whatsoever? No. Well, would you understand then a lady that I want to connect with on spirit's side that would suffer with the stomach condition? Yes. Because I'm being given the stomach condition, yes. Okay? And I feel with this lady, I want someone that's a fairly comfortable build, I would say. A bigger build lady, not a slight build lady that's given me this, yes?
Yes.
Yeah? I think when you really examine the evidence of what myself and other mediums do, you will find that a large proportion could never be explained away by something like cold reading. It's because there are sometimes such specific details that come through. And I'm seeing like a painting, or a print it would be, of a painting that looks like a Stubbs painting. You know, the ones of the horses and the pigs and things like that? The lady in the white at the back there, I'm not around you, am I? Oh, I hate it when I can't find the link. Let me see if I
think if I were talking to someone in the spirit world, I'd say things like, what's it like being dead? Can you see the whole of the universe? Why do you ask them such banal questions?
Yeah, good point. But I think what happens is that mediumship comes from the non-rational, non-verbal parts of the brain, if there's such a thing. I believe it's a blending of thoughts between myself and the spirit communicator. But if only it could be just like a telephone line. Let me just see if I can get a little bit more information from her first. If you've convinced a person that that's their grandmother to the point that they're actually crying, I mean, surely those tears enough are perhaps proof that they've had proof that that really is their grandmother that's making the communication.
It could indicate just desperate wishful thinking, perhaps.
Now, don't feel I'm with a Stephen Bennett, but I've got those things I want to bring together somehow with particularly a car crash.
My friend Ben died in a car crash and his best friend was called Steve.
Your friend Ben Parson, but it's not Bennett, as I said, but it was Ben. Let me see if I can describe Ben to see if we can...
Beyond whether it's true or false, what concerns me as well is the exploitation of often vulnerable people.
Can I say, when you were buying the new shoes, had he been on your mind at that time?
He's on my mind all the time, really,
yeah,
but...
because it's as if I was particularly felt him around me at that particular time. That's why I feel I've got the connection with that. And, you know, his message is really, in a way, sorry. Because he can't...
Do you feel it might actually be damaging to some people, stopping them from letting go after they've lost somebody that they love very much?
It's a good point, but a lot of people bring up that. But I believe that it does help people to progress and move forward. He gives me the feeling that...
But do people move forward, or do they get addicted to a spiritual hit? Most of this congregation are regulars. Craig Hamilton Parker's grasp here seems impressive, until it transpires that he's already read this bereaved girl before.
He actually had a tyre on the left hand, side of his car changed before the accident, and the police thought that it was something to do with that. And I had a message from you before saying it was something to do with the tyre.
I've given you a message about him before? Okie dokie, I can't remember that. But anyway, I want to sort of feel his... I believe what I do is absolutely true. I believe that I give...
You really believe it?
I believe absolutely
Seriously,
100%
you believe it?
that it's true, because it's been proven to me against what I believe is against my rationality. But it's been shown to me so many, many times that life continues. And personal proof that I've had that has given me proof of my father pass of continuation of spirit. I mean, incredible things that are so very personal and subjective, they're hard to argue a case for. But for me, it's been life transforming. And I believe, as I was helped, I can help others.
Time and again, so-called psychics claim special status outside science and evidence. I have personal proof it's true to me. But as with religion, if it hangs on private feelings that can't be proved or disproved by science, then in what way can it be valid or meaningful to the rest of us?
Cling together, sing together, stand together in one loving band.
Next, I want to find out what happens when those who claim mysterious powers do allow themselves to be tested.
No, I think it's 4.
So shall we see how well you've done?
I want to show how scientific reason is always the best way to look at the world and explain the dangers of superstition. I'm often asked how I know that there isn't a spirit world or psychic clairvoyance. Well, I don't. It seems improbable, but unlike the fixed worldviews of mystical faith, science is always open to new possibilities. Scientists test and retest evidence, refreshing our understanding of reality. Until quite recently, scientists didn't know how bats fly around in total darkness. Could they have paranormal extrasensory perception? In the 1940s, the American zoologist Donald Griffin demonstrated experimentally that bats use sonar, echolocation of their cries. Back then, sonar was brand new military technology, and the theory that it was natural to bats outraged some of Griffin's colleagues. But the more scientists tested the evidence, the more robust the theory became. They found out exactly what the bat cries were like, how they work, how the brain works. Everything about it added up to a complete picture of mutually supporting evidence that this really was a fact. It's this cumulative build-up of corroborating evidence that distinguishes the discovery of bat sonar from alleged paranormal effects. The so-called evidence for psychic phenomena is not robust, but will-o'-the-wisp. The more we look at it, the weaker it becomes. The alleged detection of water through dowsing is not obviously ridiculous. It might work, but does it? The only way to tell is through a rigorous experiment.
How does dowsing work? That's the #1 question, and nobody can answer you. Well, I reckon I'm convinced that something is helping me to dowse. One of the earlier chaps thinks it's God.
How do you do it, then? What's your principle of dowsing?
I think the question, and I expect God to respond in a way that I understand. I'm going to expect the right-hand one to point to the camera and the left-hand one straight forward.
Yeah, okay.
Look, it's following him round.
Yeah. And have you done the test yet in the tent?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and what was the result?
I was going to get 6 or 8, 100%.
Yeah, and what happened?
1.
So what do you make of that, then?
He's having his laugh, isn't he? He loves a joke.
Yes.
You don't realise.
Do I get second goes at it?
Oh, yeah, you can have as many goes.
The psychologist Chris French thinks there may be a simpler explanation. He has devoted his career to investigating claims of the paranormal. And now he has set up this test for dowsing, a properly controlled double-blind trial. In each of these rows, just one container, chosen at random, holds a bottle of water. All the rest contain sand. Neither the dowsers nor the tester are allowed to know where the water is until the boxes are opened. So there are no unintentional giveaways.
Have another go.
Safeguards like this make the double-blind trial one of the crowning achievements of scientific reason.
Okay, put it on the end one then.
Number 6 again.
I'd say so.
Okay.
Right. What you'll typically find when you talk to dowsers is they'll give you lots and lots of anecdotal evidence, lots of stories about how they discovered a leak in their neighbour's pipes and so on and so forth. But there are always other possible explanations there.
Yes.
What we're trying to do is set up conditions which would rule out any of those other explanations. But then we get down to the very fundamental, basic issue: can the dowsers actually do what they think they can do?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's 4. No, I think it's 4.
So shall we see how well you've done? This is sand.
In that case, I can't do this.
This is the waters in number 5. Sand again. This time, guess was bin number 3. And this time you're correct. That's water. And I bet that's sand.
Yes, well, actually, there are 2 possible words.
Final trial, it's sand again, I'm afraid.
In that case, I'm 100% wrong again.
Well, you got 1 right out of 6, which is what we'd expect by chance. So far, they're performing pretty much in line with mean chance expectation. In other words, guesswork.
Yeah.
So no one has scored more than 2 hits out of 6.
3.
The people you've been testing, do they understand why they're being put through the double-blind procedure?
I think once we've explained it to them, then they appreciate why someone who is perhaps sceptical or doubtful about their claims would see that that was necessary. What's interesting is it doesn't actually tend to dent their confidence at all.
Which suggests that they're completely sincere.
I think they are completely sincere.
Yes.
And they're typically very, very surprised when we run them through a series of trials and actually say at the end of the day, well, your performance is no better than would expect just on the basis of guesswork. And then what typically happens is they'll make up all kinds of reasons, some might say excuses, as to why they didn't pass that particular test.
I feel the whole test is wrong.
I'm shocked beyond words that this has happened. But I did say from the outset, couldn't we just sort out some grey blocks and some scaffold boards so that I can walk above it, which is what I would routinely do, and I've done for 40 years.
Who knows where or what bottles were in what tubs.
That's the whole point, isn't it? That's the whole point.
But if you understand dosing like I do, you'll understand that everything leaves an image.
This state of denial is extraordinary. Even when confronted with hard fact, these dowsers prefer not to face up to truth, but retain their delusion. Rather than adapt to evidence, many of us, it seems, remain trapped in ways of thinking inherited from our primitive ancestors. Irrational belief, from dowsing to psychic clairvoyance, has roots in early mankind's habit of attributing spirit and intention to natural phenomena such as water, the sun, a rock, or the sea. The sea has often been thought to be a malevolent force actively out to get you. In 480 BC, King Xerxes of the Persians built a pontoon bridge across the Hellespont, and a rough sea came and wrecked it. And King Xerxes was so furious that he sentenced the sea to 300 lashes. I wonder whether there's something of King Xerxes in all of us to this day. We don't want to believe that things just happen. We want to believe that there's some kind of deliberate intention behind everything, even where inanimate objects are concerned. And perhaps that is the key to humanity's belief in the supernatural. Even in the 21st century, despite all that science has revealed about the indifferent vastness of the universe, the human mind remains a wanton storyteller, creating intention in the randomness of reality. The delivery of rewards by a one-armed bandit is determined at random, but many gamblers want to think that what they do can increase their chances of winning the jackpot. They stand on one leg or wear a lucky shirt. Are these superstitious behaviors a byproduct of our evolution?
All wild animals have to be kind of natural statisticians, looking for patterns in the apparent randomness of nature when they're looking for food or trying to avoid predators. There are two kinds of mistakes they can make. They can either fail to detect pattern when there is some, or they can seem to detect pattern when there isn't any, and that's superstition. "60 years ago, the American psychologist B.F. Skinner investigated the behavior of pigeons, rewarding them with food when they learnt to peck a key in the feeding apparatus. But then Skinner set the apparatus to reward the birds at random. Now the pigeons just had to sit back and wait. But that isn't what they did. Instead, the majority developed what Skinner called superstitious behavior. When an individual pigeon, for example, happened to look over its left shoulder, and the reward mechanism just happened to click in at that point, it would have got the idea that it was looking over the left shoulder that had got it the reward, so it tried it again. By sheer luck, as it happened, the reward mechanism delivered food at the same time again. And so the pigeon was reinforced in its idea that looking over the left shoulder was what got it the reward. And it went on and turned into a maniac for looking over the left shoulder.
Humans can be no better than pigeons. We constantly create false positives. We touch wood for luck, see faces in toasted cheese, fortunes in tea leaves. These provide a comforting illusion of meaning. This is the human condition. We desperately want to feel there's an organizing force at work in our bewilderingly complex world. And in the irrational mindset, if you believe in the mystical pattern you've imposed on reality, you call yourself spiritual. Spirituality is a prized commodity. The media tell us to respect spiritual souls and their apparently deep insights. Spiritual self-help guides do a roaring trade in the material world, outnumbering science books by 3 to 1. But what does spirituality actually mean?
So please take your seat and please come slowly and gently so that we can start the proceeding without losing time. So could you please...
Satish Kumar is the editor of Resurgence, an ecological magazine at the sandal-wearing end of the Green Movement, and he counts amongst his many fans Prince Charles and the Dalai Lama.
I represent the entire history of evolution. I was present in the beginning, the first Big Bang, and I'll be here for billions of years to come.
But isn't Satish's spirituality just about imposing yet another superstitious false positive?
World is made of two elements. One element is visible element. The other aspect of creation is invisible dimension, things we cannot see. So
what is that element which is invisible? I call it spiritual. When you go in a room, you say, there is a good feeling here. There's a spirit of the room.
Well, now you've changed to something rather different.
The spirit is a very big and very holistic and very inclusive word. It is not defined in a one particular way. So when you go in a room, you can say, the tree has a spirit. A rock has a spirit. It's a living rock for me. Nature without spirit cannot exist. Like a tree cannot exist without the sunlight, it cannot exist without rain, it cannot exist without soil. Also, it cannot exist without the tree-ness. The tree-ness is the spiritual quality.
Or the rockness.
Or the rockness.
When you talk about the rockness or the quality of a rock, I can see as a scientist a rock has hardness and things like that, but I think that's not quite what you mean. It sounds as though what you do mean is something imposed by the human observer. A rock is atoms.
But there is a rock quality in the rock.
Well, that's a matter of assertion. I mean, you are now simply asserting that.
Asserting, I'm understanding it. This is my understanding.
Okay.
Some may understand more fully than others, but it is not imposed. It is there.
It all sounds very poetic, but it's not reality. Like priests, mullahs and rabbis, New Age mystics ceaselessly attempt to fill gaps in human understanding with fabricated meaning. Science and rationality are often accused of having a cold, bleak outlook. But why is it bleak to face up to the evidence of what we know?
The word mundane has come to mean boring and dull. And it really shouldn't. It should mean the opposite, because it comes from the Latin mundus, meaning the world, and the world is anything but dull. The world is wonderful. There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality.
And yet today, science is under attack. Next, I want to look at the dangers that poses.
Why do I have to trust, the GP? Why do I have to trust the Royal Society?
I think you're so close to being right, but yet you're damn wrong.
In the last 50 years, science has put a man on the moon, cloned a sheep, decoded the human genome. And yet, sadly, the white heat of the 1960s seems to be treated as a white elephant today.
What colour do you see, guys?
In the thing, it looks multicolored.
Okay, it's blue, yellow, and that's it.
A prejudice against science is evident in schools. Physics A-levels have halved in the last 25 years, chemistry fallen by more than a third. University departments are closing all around the country.
And last but not least...
This is a betrayal of the Enlightenment. The fundamental problem, I think, lies with the fashion throughout our educational system to teach students to value private feeling more highly than evidence-based reason. This is rooted in the postmodern relativist agenda. For relativists, scientific truth is just a patriarchal Western orthodoxy that, like the old Roman Catholic Church, stands in the way of other equally valid outlooks on the world.
With things like the paranormal, the drive for alternative medicine, all these kinds of movements away from the orthodoxy in science, I see it a lot as like the Protestant Reformation was vis-a-vis Roman Catholicism. Internet, in a way, is kind of functioning as a kind of information source, very much like the printing press did in the 15th century and 16th century, that is in a sense empowering people to sort of look up stuff for themselves in terms of different kinds of treatments and things like that, and in a way not trusting the experts anymore. Saying, well, look, why do I have to trust, the GP? Why do I have to trust the Royal Society?
I think you're so close to being right, but yet you're damn wrong. You're absolutely wrong. I would like to take that ball and run with it in a different direction. Yes, we want to question authority. We don't want to say, because this person is the president of the Royal Society, therefore what he says is right. We've got to go back to the evidence and find out what is actually true.
The problem is, of course, people may look at the same evidence and then reach a somewhat different conclusion from what the head of the Royal Society reached. And so they will say, well, look, you know, I looked at the evidence too, and I'm not persuaded by this. That's where you start getting a kind of an opening up of science.
Steve Fuller is of course right that the internet is revolutionizing how we use and consume information. But the impersonal algorithms of internet search engines do not weed out robust evidence from unsourced, uncorroborated assertion. Wikipedia World presents both great opportunity and huge danger.
Paranoid conspiracy theories circulate unchallenged. Sometimes they're relatively harmless, like the rumor that NASA faked the moon landings, which is a bit of a joke because the evidence for going to the moon is so strong. But how about the malicious and utterly unfounded rumor that 4,000 Jews were tipped off by Israeli agents not to go to work in the World Trade Center on 9/11?
It's one of the nasty lies circulating as truth in the blog community of racists and religious fundamentalists.
Now such people can find each other anywhere in the world instantly, whipping up scares and reinforcing their paranoia and delusions.
As evidence is devalued, even medical progress has become a target.
Her lungs had gone into spasms. She was vomiting.
Hundreds of families blame the MMR vaccines for autism, brain damage and meningitis.
When one report, now widely discredited, wrongly linked MMR vaccine with autism, an innuendo circulated that the establishment was conspiring to risk our children's health. It led to hundreds of thousands of parents failing to protect their offspring from the threat of measles, a serious disease that, in Afghanistan, kills 35,000 people a year.
This is the world of private hunches and no respect for evidence.
Reason has built the modern world. It is a precious but also a fragile thing, which can be corroded by apparently harmless irrationality.
We must favor verifiable evidence over private feeling. Otherwise, we leave ourselves vulnerable to those who would obscure the truth.
Next week, I look at how health has become one of the fiercest battlegrounds between reason and superstition.
Starting next on E4, a telling word association test for the Big Brother housemates. And More 4 is getting to the heart of Britain's childhood obesity problem in Supersized Kids. Film 4 is showing Pitch Black, the cult sci-fi movie that shot Vin Diesel to fame. Here on 4, how far have 3 children who came to Britain 2 years ago embraced their new home?